Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer on a literal classic of personal development, Stephen R. Covey's masterpiece, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So, are you tired of endless life hacks that just overpromise and underdeliver? Because honestly, Covey was due. We live in an era that is completely obsessed with these tips, tricks, and shortcuts that promise to make us richer, faster, and more likable overnight. But Covey actually challenges this modern obsession head on. He argues that true, lasting success, it just doesn't come from superficial life hacks. Instead, if we want to truly change our lives, we have to change our paradigms, the very lenses through which we view the world. And this brings us to the fundamental paradigm shift Covey demands of us. On one side, we've got what he calls the personality ethic. This is all about those quick fixes, superficial charm, and basically just manipulating your environment to get what you want. It's what most modern advice focuses on, right? But Covey urges us to step back and return to the character ethic. This means building our lives from the inside out, resting on bedrock principles like integrity, courage, and justice. The absolute crucial takeaway here is that you just can't fake your way to lasting effectiveness. You literally have to build it into your character. Okay, so here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to start with the Maturity Continuum, followed by the private victory, the public victory, the engine of growth, and then finally wrap up with a lifelong practice. All right, let's dive right into part 1, the Maturity Continuum, and this incredible journey of growth. Before we can even look at the habits themselves, we really need to understand the path they take us on. Covey defines the maturity continuum as the ultimate journey of human effectiveness. Think about it for a second. We all begin life entirely dependent on other people, right? But as we grow and mature, we become independent. We become capable of directing our own lives and taking care of ourselves. But here's the thing, independence is not the finish line. You see, you go from dependence, where you rely entirely on others, to independence, and then finally to interdependence. The actual pinnacle of human effectiveness is step 3. It's this powerful realization that while you might be strong on your own, you are infinitely stronger when you combine your talents with others. The 7 habits are essentially the stepping stones that carry you right across this continuum. Moving on to part 2, the private victory, moving from dependence to independence. You simply cannot effectively lead or collaborate with anyone else until you have mastered yourself. That internal mastery kicks off with habit 1, be proactive. Now, being proactive doesn't just mean taking the initiative, though that's part of it. It goes so much deeper. It means taking absolute, unconditional responsibility for your life. Think of it this way. Reactive people are constantly driven by their feelings, by circumstances, by whatever environment they're in. Proactive people, they are driven by their carefully considered values. Picture 2 concentric circles for a moment. That wide outer circle of concern holds everything you worry about: the economy, what people think of you, the weather. But your inner circle of influence, that contains only the things you can actually control, like your attitude, your habits, and your responses. Here's the secret. Highly effective people literally ignore their circle of concern. They pour all of their energy entirely into expanding their circle of influence. And by doing that, their actual power and influence naturally grow. So if habit 1 is the realization that you are the programmer of your life, habit 2 is the act of actually writing the program. Begin with the end in mind is based on this core principle that all things are created twice, first as a vision in your mind, and then in physical reality. Basically, you have to know exactly where you are going before you take a step. To figure out that final destination, try this powerful, if somewhat heavy, thought experiment. Imagine walking into a funeral parlor, walking up, looking right into the casket and realizing it's your own funeral. What do you want your family, your friends, and your colleagues to say about you? By visualizing your ultimate legacy like this, you can essentially reverse engineer your life. You stop getting caught up in all that pointless busy work of the day-to-day, and you start living according to a deeply internalized personal mission statement. Once you have that mission statement locked in, you arrive at a habit 3, put first things first. If habit 2 was the mental creation, habit 3 is the physical creation. This is the gritty, on-the-ground daily discipline of managing your time and your actions so they align perfectly with that ultimate vision you just created for yourself. To really master this, Covey categorizes our tasks into a time management matrix divided by urgency and importance. Most of us spend our lives frantically putting out fires in the urgent and important bucket, or we completely numb ourselves with endless scrolling in the not urgent and not important space. But the crucial sweet spot is quadrant 2. Important, but not urgent. This is exactly where highly effective people live. This is the space for relationship building, long-term planning, and deep work. By focusing on Quadrant 2, you actually prevent the crises that make life feel so chaotic in the first place. All right, let's shift gears to Part 3, the public victory, moving from independence to interdependence. Once you achieve that self-mastery, you are finally ready to engage with the world and move toward true interdependence. That begins with Habit 4, think win/win. Win/win isn't just some clever negotiation tactic, it is a fundamental philosophy of human interaction. A lot of us are conditioned to view life as a zero-sum game, right? We think that for me to win, you have to lose. But thinking win/win requires an abundance mentality. It's this deep-seated belief that there is plenty of success, recognition, and resources for absolutely everyone. And hey, if a genuine mutual benefit just cannot be found in a situation, the most mature fallback is simply no deal. You agree to disagree without resentment, and that preserves the relationship for the future. Habit 5 is honestly arguably the most transformative habit in the entire book. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Covey observed a pretty harsh truth about human communication. Most people just do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen merely with the intent to reply. They filter everything someone else is saying through their own autobiography, essentially just waiting for their turn to speak. To overcome this terrible habit, we have to practice empathic listening. This means listening with your eyes, your ears, and your heart to fully grasp another person's emotional reality. You have to diagnose before you prescribe. Because when people feel deeply and genuinely understood, they finally drop those emotional defenses. And only then are they truly open to hearing your perspective. So, when you combine a win-win mindset with that powerful empathetic listening, you arrive at Habit 6, Synergize. Synergy is the crowning achievement of all the previous habits we've talked about. It is what happens when independent people genuinely value and celebrate their differences, rather than just tolerating them. True synergy completely defies standard logic. In this space, 1 + 1 does not equal 2. It equals 3 or 10 or even 100. By bringing diverse viewpoints together and actually using that friction constructively, you spark creative solutions that neither party could have ever discovered on their own. That, right there, is the absolute magic of interdependence. Now on to Part 4, the engine of growth, continuous renewal. So, all of these habits require an engine to keep them going. Habit 7 is that engine. Sharpen the saw. Imagine a woodcutter feverishly hacking away at a tree with a super dull blade. When you stop and ask him why he doesn't just take a break to sharpen the saw, he pants, "I don't have time, I'm way too busy sawing." Sounds crazy, right? But we do this to ourselves constantly. Habit 7 is the commitment to regularly stop and take the time to renew the greatest asset you have, yourself. To actually sharpen that saw, you have to establish regular practices across 4 vital dimensions. First, physical, caring for your body through good nutrition, exercise, and adequate rest. Second, mental, expanding your mind, reading, and seriously limiting that mindless consumption. Third, spiritual, connecting to your core values through meditation, nature, or maybe art. And finally, social and emotional, deepening your meaningful relationships and actively serving your community. By making time for these 4 areas, you create this incredible upward spiral of growth that literally fuels the other 6 habits. And finally, Part 5, a lifelong practice. At the end of the day, these models aren't about attending a quick weekend seminar. They are about consciously designing a life. Mastering these principles is the challenging, yet incredibly rewarding work of building a life of profound character, purpose, and lasting impact. It's about finally moving away from that quick-fix personality ethic and grounding yourself in a deeply rooted character ethic. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought before we go. Look inward right now. Which of these 7 habits are you neglecting the most in your own life? And what is one single step you can take today to change that? I'd love to hear your answers, so let me know in the comments below. And hey, to keep your own saw sharp, make sure you subscribe, like this explainer, and share it with someone who could really benefit from a paradigm shift. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I'll see you in the next one.